Hello and welcome. Good afternoon from snowy Chicago. I'm Kara Johnson, the manager of teacher and student programs at the Newberry Library. And today I'm going to show you a brief demonstration of our digital collections for the classroom site. DCCs for short. So the DCCs are a collection of digitized material from our library, which also include contextual essays and classroom materials. This also happens to be the Newberry's most visited digital resource on our Newberry website. If at any time you'd like to ask a question about these resources, please feel free to type in the chat and I'll try to answer your question. So today I'm going to show you a few of the different components of our DCCs, but first I'm going to show you the main page and then showing you how to kind of move around the site as you'd like. So first we start with dcc.newberry.org, which is our home page. There are lots of ways you can navigate this site. First, you can browse by subject, you can browse by date, and you can also do a keyword search. If you'd like, you can browse all by subject or by time period. So if you click on that, you're able to scroll down and you'll see an alphabetized arrangement of our digital collections. This is a really nice way to just get a sense of what the site has to offer. We have upwards of 100 digital collections and we are always adding more. And this is a growing and changing and very live digital collection. So now I'm going to show you how to get to a digital collection and I'll show you its various components. So as an example, one of my good colleagues at the Newberry, Christopher Fletcher, has written a really wonderful digital collection for the classroom on the Inquisition. So I'm going to type that into the search and it will pull up shortly. You just have to be patient. Let's see here. There it is. Okay. You can also use author names if you're looking for a particular DCC author as well. So I'm here in Chris Fletcher's Inquisition DCC, and the three main pieces of a DCC are the essay, the gallery, and the selected sources. So first, the essays are a way to kind of contextualize a historical subject or a period, and this is a nice overview and really designed with teachers and students in mind as they are becoming oriented with a particular historical period or just getting kind of the lay of the land of this material. There are lots of sections, or I should say a larger DCC is broken up into smaller kind of chunks, almost little mini chapters, which is another really good quality of the DCC because you can go at a different pace, you can use parts of a DCC, you don't have to use all of it. We also have some really great discussion questions that allow researchers, teachers, students to really dig into this topic and think a little bit more deeply about the different concepts and ideas coming up in this digital resource. We also make sure to include some questions that go back to the digitized primary sources that are highlighted in these digital collections. And one piece of that is really trying to encourage students to analyze and engage with primary sources and to get really confident looking at these historical objects. So the gallery is basically taking the digitized items that you see here in the essay and putting them all together in their own page. This allows people to kind of dig into individual items, maybe taking the written apparatus away for a moment and just kind of experiencing the primary source on their own. That is another way, one of many ways to kind of engage with this material. So one thing you can do is you can see a bigger version of each digitized item, and these will be found in Internet Archive. You can zoom in on these items. This is a prayer book from 1515, and the level of detail is incredibly impressive. it always blows me away to see these resources, and it's certainly not the same as being in front of the object in the reading room, but it's pretty darn close, especially in our digital moment. One other really wonderful feature of these digitized items is you can see all of the metadata associated with that item, and you can also find it in our library catalog. So if you are interested in seeing more of this, if you want to schedule a visit to the reading room, you are more than welcome to do so. And now you know where this prayer book is held, and you can see it in person. So as you can see, the DCCs are a really wonderful introduction to primary source research, humanities research, primary source objects, all kinds of different things. So it's really opening up a lot of doors for different audiences, whether you're a teacher or a student or a researcher. If you're just tuning in, I'm Kara Johnson from the Newberry Library. I'm walking around the digital collections for the classroom site and showing you some of our resources that you are able to check out on your own. The DCC site is completely free and accessible to anybody who wants to check them out. You don't need a PhD, you don't need to be a teacher or a student. You can be anybody interested in learning more about these objects. So one more thing I want to show you is one of the charms of this site is that you can really kind of get lost in all the amazing materials. And I just thought it would be useful to show you this one particular DCC that's pretty popular because of the visual materials that are featured. We have a really impressive cartography collection at the Newberry, and I know a lot of teachers that I'm in contact with have said that maps are just a really great teaching tool, and they are a really good interdisciplinary teaching tool too. So any humanities classroom or even a STEM classroom could use it, and there's a really nice kind of flexibility to those sources. And I just thought I would take a moment and just scroll through this beautiful gallery of maps from various time periods and locales for you to hopefully check out on your own when you have some time. So again, if you are just tuning in, I'm Kara Johnson from the Newberry, and I'm showing you the digital collections for the classroom. So with that, I'd like to actually give the floor to a good colleague of ours, Dr. Rachel Boyle, who will share her experiences in both developing a DCC and her experience using the DCCs in the classroom in her undergraduate teaching. First, a bit about Rachel. She is a historian and co-founder of Omnia History, a public history collaborative dedicated to using the past to promote social change. She teaches and writes for public audiences using scholarship to inform her public history work and vice versa. Boyle earned her PhD in US and public history from Loyola University, Chicago, and currently teaches at DePaul University. So thank you again, Rachel, for joining us. I'm going to fade into the background for a moment, and I'll come back and answer any questions that we have from the audience. And again, to our audience, if you have any other questions about our digital resources, feel free to drop them in the chat. Thanks, Rachel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kara. I am thrilled to be here. I think that digital collections for the classroom are just fantastic teaching resources. As a historian, I really appreciate how they facilitate interrogation of primary source documents in a really digitally accessible way. As Kara mentioned, I have both used DCCs in the classroom, and I've also had the honor of creating 2 collections. One of the collections I helped curate as part of a broader project asking, what is the Midwest? And the DCC was really an intentional effort to make the content generated from that broader project relevant to high school classrooms. And the other that you can see here on the screen is a collection about Chicago's legacy of conflict, which also built off of a familiarity with Newberry collections from adult seminars that were related to this topic, teacher programs, and a digital exhibit that was created in coordination with the Newberry and other archival institutions in the Chicago Collections Consortium. So I'm sure that every collection has its own origin story, but I share this background because in my experience, these collections are the product of a deep familiarity, both with the Newberry collections and a broader story, in my case, a historical story or topic. So given that familiarity with the broader context and the Newberry's collection, the next step in creating these resources was really to make that topic and the collections useful in a classroom setting. And so that process starts by identifying a few overall questions for the collection. In other words, what are the key issues that this collection aims to explore? And if you could scroll down to the bottom of the introduction, I believe that most collections have a few of these overall guiding questions. For example, this collection asks, how do primary source documents tell stories about the past? Whose voices are elevated and whose are silenced? And when do we call a conflict a riot or a protest, and why? So after identifying these big guiding questions, the next step in creating these collections really has to do with selecting collection items that facilitates an exploration of those guiding questions. So in this collection really digs into 5 different historical places and times. And you can see the sources that were ultimately selected here. I worked to find items that are visually interesting, trying to incorporate a range of media where possible, choosing items that are representative of a certain time or place, and items that can really tell a story and elicit questions from students. So for example, in this Riots and Protest collection, we have 3 documents from an IWW songbook. That's International Workers of the World, which is an example of a radical labor organization in the early 20th century who very much cultivated kind of a culture of protest and dissent. And those items, as Kara's showing, include a song. It's a songbook, so there's multiple songs in this document, but I highlighted one song so that students can compare and contrast the messages of 2 different songs. The IWW book also includes a preamble, which is a different kind of source, even if it's coming from the same document. This is encouraging students to ask questions of a text and who's that text audience, and what kind of message is being conveyed in this primary source document. And then the third item from this one songbook is an illustration, Forging Freedom's Weapons. And I use this source to ask how is gender portrayed? What does labor look like? How does race and gender and class interact to convey a certain image of what a worker is in the early 20th century? So that's an example of items that were selected to, again, facilitate this exploration of protest culture, in this example in early 20th century Chicago. Now, although the Newberry's collections are truly remarkable, like all archives, they include silences. And this was particularly clear in this collection in the section about the 1960s, which I think Kara is scrolling to now. There we go. So the Newberry has rich material on the 1968 Democratic National Convention, but not so many items on the uprisings that followed the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. earlier that year, including any sources created by Black Chicagoans. So a DCC like this can even ask questions about what can't these sources tell you? What silences exist in the historical record? And how does, in this example, the lack of sources by or about Black Chicagoans in 1968 shape what we can and can't learn from primary source documents about protest in Chicago? So once these collection items are selected, I wrote brief introductions, as you can see here, to provide necessary context to material, and conclude with questions to really guide analysis of the collection items. And as you've already seen so far, DCC creators are encouraged to frame questions that encourage an interrogation of visual characteristics, encourage asking questions about intended audience, authorship, the potential original use, and perspectives left out of the source. These questions that associate the sources also aim to build in complexity and push students beyond simple yes or no answers. And finally, the questions really ask students to make connections among the sources and their own experiences. So beyond creating DCCs, I have found this powerful combination of context, collection items, and analytic questions very useful in the classroom. Now, most of these collections are geared to be applicable in high school classrooms, but I found that kind of analytic work to be really useful in the undergraduate classroom as well. So for example, this Chicago and the Great Migration digital collection for the classroom, I've incorporated into the classroom, particularly as courses have been online due to COVID-19. But I have a module on the Great Migration. And although I provide the big picture context, I was looking for specific Chicago sources that could humanize and personalize the Great Migration to kind of get at both the hope that spurred migration, the work of building community in a new city, and the realities of racial discrimination in Chicago. So like Kara showed you earlier, I used the search function and searched the portal and found this fabulous DCC. I looked at the gallery and found a handful of poems that perfectly opened up those themes. And then the accompanying essay really helped provide a series of analytic questions that I was able to adapt for the online module. So in the class then, students would read one of the poems, respond to the guiding questions about that poem, and repeat that process for each of the three. So it provided an opportunity for them to practice their primary source analysis skills, to analyze poetry, which is not a common type of primary source I'm able to integrate often into my courses. And then they're able to connect these primary sources back to their broader contextual knowledge of the Great Migration. So that's just one example of how I have found digital collections for the classroom to be really useful in my experience. And knowing the work that goes behind the creation of these DCCs just, I think really, I hope demonstrates the strength of this dynamic collection.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciated hearing you talk about two different perspectives, what it's like behind the scenes, developing the collection, working with the collection items, really thinking about how this would be most useful in telling a particular kind of narrative, maybe one that hasn't been told before, and also the utility of the DCCs by other authors and on other topics in the classroom and how you've been able to mobilize that as well. So thank you so much for that. That's really helpful and very illuminating. I want to thank everyone for watching, and we're available to take your questions. We have a couple more minutes left if you would like to learn more. In the meantime, I can do some plugging of our wonderful resources. Newberry.org is a wonderful place to start. All of our digital resources are available for your use, both the DCCs and our digital exhibitions and digital publications. We have some transcription projects if you want to help transcribe some postcards and some other old documents and manuscripts. Lots of really fun things. Rachel, if you could tell us a few more DCCs you would recommend, if you have used any others.
Well, I have to say there's a lot of great collections just in Chicago history, which is the area that I do a lot of work in. So we've already obviously focused on, riots and protest and migration, and there's a lot of other collections that focus on culture. And I, as a historian, I kind of appreciate the ones that focus more on literature as an area that I'm not as strong in. So I have to say that just in general, the Chicago history DCCs are really, I think, are a strength of the collection.
That's good to know. And also I should mention as well that a lot of these collections are taking objects and manuscripts and different kinds of items in different places in the library and bringing them together and into this narrative. So the Chicago migration, all of these items are scattered throughout the library in various holdings. And this is a really nice way to start telling those stories across those objects and start bringing them together under that, that conceptual umbrella that we have with the DCCs. Great. The chat has been very quiet. I think everybody's just really cold and maybe trying to shovel themselves out of their houses. So, but we are available for any, if you want to send us a note, send us an email. I'm available at johnsonk@newberry.org if you have other questions about our digital resources, anything related to our educational programming. And I'm sure Rachel Boyle at Omnia History would be happy to facilitate anything else as well, answer any other questions that you might have for her.
One question I have.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you can speak to the ways in which these DCCs work for high school classrooms and how they kind of meet the, educational requirements that I know teachers are working with oftentimes.
Yes, absolutely. So we're working hard to continue to learn kind of the changing landscape of educational curriculum. I think the most important thing that we're interested in, and I know that teachers are really interested in, is finding free, high quality digital primary sources to work with. And I think that is something that we have to offer, and also being able to find other ways of kind of packaging that digital material. I know that we have a lot of teachers who work in kind of advanced history classes, like advanced placement, where they're focused on like the document-based question. So there's really a lot of interest in skills building with that kind of packaging of primary sources. And I think we're actually really starting to actually move younger. So we're working with some educational writing consultants to do K-8 curriculum, which we will be able to build out over the course of this year. Because kindergartners are also thinking about close analysis. They don't know that, or it's being packaged differently, marketed differently, but there's always that element of analysis, being able to kind of construct a narrative around an image, being able to look closely and figure out what's going on and contextualize it historically. So I think that's where what we do really well for those high schoolers and also college age students and their instructors, but also trying to continue to broaden and make that net bigger, I think. Mm-hmm. That's a great question, though. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we are done for now, but we're always available, newberry.org. Thank you again for tuning in today, and I hope everybody stays warm and stay safe, and we hope to see you at a future live